Okay, hello and good day to everyone. That is you tuning in here at the Sphere Rocket Podcast Network. Once again, I'm going to be the host for today's episode. My name is Duane, and right now we are joined by a very special guest once again by the name of Kristopher Esqueda, a real estate dynamo with a decade of experience in everything from construction to lease negotiations. So whether you're a first-time homebuyer or a seasoned investor, Christopher got you covered with his commitment to service, communication, and attention to detail. So I guess for more details and information, we got the man himself. Chris, how are you doing? And welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Okay, looking pretty sharp. So I'm loving the background as well. I see you like plants. You that kind of guy who likes plants at home, or is it just come with the office
Yeah,
again?
yeah. There's a lot more plants
Wow.
back there. So yeah, this is my home office. So I like to try and feel like I'm outside when I'm inside.
Okay, that's pretty much. I guess that also counts as a garden, given the amount of plants that you have in your home area. And I guess it's more easier and healthier to breathe in a room with lots of plants in it. And
Yes.
before we get started, I guess for my first question, what do you think is the best meal for you to take? Let's say on a really successful week at work on a weekend, what is the best meal that you would like to eat to, just celebrate the occasion?
Tonight I'm going to a new restaurant that just opened here in Nashville, Tennessee, where I live, called Choi. It's Chinese American fine dining food. So Peking duck, crab fried rice, kind of elevated Chinese food. There's a ton of options here where I live in Nashville. A lot of really great places, and that just happens to be one really amazing place that I'm going tonight to celebrate at.
Wow. I'm just got hungry the moment I've heard of crab fried rice. It's one of those guilty pleasures. It's not the best in terms of cholesterol, but it's definitely something to eat if you're wanting to feel a bit fancy and you eat something great to celebrate something. And yeah, I
Oh
guess
yeah.
Nashville is pretty popular with food stuff. I believe I've watched a documentary or a show about, street food is also I forgot the term for it, but pretty much stalls are all around Nashville. So if you're a foodie, I guess Nashville is also one of the great places and to be at. And if you would recommend like a place to eat at Nashville that you're not going in for the first time, like where you going right now later tonight, what would it be?
That's a great question. For casual, there's one called SS Guy. It's a Thai style fried chicken. For breakfast, there's a great restaurant in East Nashville called Cafe Rose. Um, for dinner, it's pretty hard to beat the views and a great steak at Bourbon Steak, in the JW Marriott Hotel downtown. So it's the best part about living here is there's no shortage of good options for food, depending on the time of day and depending on what the vibe is.
And definitely Chris got you covered if you're asking for anything from like real estate to I guess the best places to eat at Nashville. He got all you covered in terms of answering those kind of questions. And speaking of real estate, Chris, for the first of all, how did you got into real estate in the first place?
I moved to Nashville in 2017 and came from a background in hospitality. So I owned restaurants and bars in San Francisco, California. Did that for a decade and then got a little bit burnt out and got a little bit burnt out on San Francisco. So decided to try someplace different. And I had a very close friend of mine. We've been friends now for a little over 20 years, who moved here in 2010. And so I'd started to come to visit him. And so when I decided to make a change and leave San Francisco, I landed on Nashville, decided to come out here. And then at that time, during that transition from San Francisco to Nashville, is when I sort of started kicking around this idea about doing something else other than hospitality. And some friends and mentors and former business partners and people had recommended, they thought that I would be great at real estate. I didn't know exactly what that meant. There's obviously there's a million different ways to real estate. And so I kind of went for the lowest hanging fruit. The lowest hanging fruit was becoming a real estate agent, a residential real estate agent. It's probably the easiest thing to become, not necessarily the easiest thing to do, but the barrier to entry is pretty low or non existent. And so I thought that that would be a great first step and then kind of figure it out from there. And that was, oh man, I think that was about 5 years ago now. I'm in my fifth year as a real estate agent. Um, and yeah, it's kind of been, the rest is history, so they say.
That's quite an interesting transition because first of all, you've been thriving definitely, and 10 years like handling businesses, restaurants, and bar, and that is huge. And to be burnt out in that after like a decade or so means that you must have been something inside that you're looking for something else that makes your I guess your life a bit more interesting, and you find it in real estate via someone telling you that hey, you should do this. I guess something that makes you stand out in terms of real estate is if you're good with conversations and just talking to people. I think that's one of the big factors in terms of like getting in touch with real estate. So in your case, so when you get started in real estate, I guess it's not always like smooth sailing from the start. You need to have those challenges from the get go. So in your case, when you started in real estate, what do you think were the challenges before you got settled in into real estate?
Yeah, I mean, there were many. The biggest one is that I didn't know anyone. I moved to Nashville and I had one person that I knew. So I went from having a huge, I'd lived in San Francisco for 12 years. I had a huge network, tons of friends, knew a lot of people. Um, you know, Transitioning into real estate there might have been a little bit easier, maybe. But I sort of decided to make that transition in a brand new city, in a brand new place that I'd never lived before, that I didn't know anyone except one person. And so I'd say the most difficult thing was trying to figure out how I could meet as many people as possible as fast as possible. And really kind of probably spent about 2 years doing everything I could do to meet as many people and make as many friends as I possibly could. In my 30s, which was a little bit different because I hadn't had to make friends in a really, really long time. I'd always just had friends, and it sort of naturally happened. So
And you own bars and restaurants, so I guess it's a bit easier to get in touch with that.
yep, absolutely. So yeah, that I mean that was probably the most difficult thing was figuring out how do I meet as many people as fast as I can. The other difficult thing was just I I'd never done real estate before. I'd never bought a house. I'd never the housing prices in San Francisco Bay Area were extreme, and so the idea of owning a home never really crossed my mind. Before that, I lived in Santa Barbara, California, also one of the most expensive places in the country, if not possibly the world. And so the idea of owning a home never really crossed my mind until I decided to become a real estate agent. So I also had to dive in and learn everything I could about what it meant to real estate, what it meant to buy a house and what a mortgage was and what financing was, and about real estate investing, and kind of just dove in head first and listened to a lot of podcasts and did as much education as I possibly could. But those were probably the two toughest things: figuring out how do I meet more people because I only know one person in a brand new city that I've never lived before, and then two, how do I learn about real estate because I've never done it before, and so I don't really know anything about it.
You really jump into cold water, like head first, from like doing something to a totally different thing with zero connections. And I think in a way that's good because you're forced to start into something new and you pretty much burned your bridges to your past work because some people they would okay, maybe I'll try real estate and if it doesn't work out, I'll just go back to what I'm doing. But what you did is you totally move everything there and you pretty much closed up the option to go back. So you need to be resourceful and basically do your all to make sure that you make it into real estate. And I think in real estate, networking is one of the strongest points of getting started and even towards the end. It's all about what they call this referrals. There's, that's one way to get several clients. And in your case, what do you think is your strongest point in terms of like getting clients?
Um, Unrelenting work ethic. So, if I'm not married, I don't have kids. So if I have to work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for 2 years, um, I was willing to do it. I didn't have another option. It was either make it in real estate or go back to hospitality, and I didn't want to do that. So, like I said, I mean, I think just putting in the work every single day, waking up early, um, exercising, educating, reading something, and then working, and whether I thought I had anything to do or not, um, there was never a day where I didn't wake up and focus on my real estate business. For the first 2 years that I was in the business, that's all I did. Worked open houses, met with other agents, listened to I don't know, hundreds of hours of podcasts, at any moment that I could. Went to conferences and seminars and coaching calls, and kind of was like drinking from a fire hose, and just woke up every day and did that straight for 2 years. So I think that was the only thing that helped me, was that I was willing to sacrifice everything, um, and at any, at all costs, go ahead and do everything I can do to try and build some sort of business as fast as possible, and whatever it takes.
Yeah, definitely sticking to your work ethic and your commitment basically to every day, making sure that you're doing something. You could not, maybe there are days, maybe even months that you don't have any sales, but it makes you feel a lot better knowing that you did something to try to get one. And that's also
Yep.
something about real estate. A lot of people would be deterred because sometimes you won't get anything at all. You don't have like, a monthly salary. It's all going to be mainly based on how much sales you do. So I was talking to this other real estate agent where there's like an entire year where he didn't get any sales. But
Yep.
regardless, he didn't make any sales that year. The people that he talked to, they're still basically what how he mentioned he's planting seeds. So he might get rejected now, but eventually those people that he talked to might be the future clients or could be referred to. Yeah, pretty much it's like a web of connections that can lead from one thing to another, like a snowball. And in your case, are you doing everything by yourself alone as a loan agent, or do you have a team with you that's helping out with your business?
I'm a solo agent. I have a virtual assistant from Rocket, but outside of that, I'm a solo agent. I came from hospitality where I employed hundreds of people. Um, and the idea of being in a business where I only had to rely on myself sounded amazing. So the idea of having a team or other people working for me sounds like a nightmare. Um, I much prefer to be self-reliant because I know that if I'm going to do it, it's going to get done correctly and right. And my goal is not to, sell $1 billion worth of real estate a year and do 30,000 transactions. My goal is to just, I mean, really is to golf, and take vacations and make enough money to be happy. And I can't. I guess I can't say that I've totally accomplished that exactly how I've thought, but I'm closer now than I ever have been before.
I think that's one of the wonders of real estate as well. You're flexible. I mean, sure, sometimes you need to work hard, but if you're able to close something, a deal like in 1 month that's going to be enough for a month, you can be pretty much relaxed in the entire month. And I guess I get from your point of view as well, and employing like hundreds of people before, it might sound good for other people as in a leadership role, but it could be a nightmare because you're managing a lot of people. If one of them has problems, you need to replace it with another, and yeah, that kind of stress is It's quite hard, especially if you've been doing that for like several years. And regardless, since you're still employing like a virtual assistant, though. I mean, you're still managing someone. So what led you to getting like a virtual assistant if you can basically do a lot of things on your own?
Yeah, in my uh, in my second year, I started to get pretty busy, um, and I wanted to I wanted to try and figure out. I started getting busy, and I wanted to try and figure out how I could get help without having to pay a super high salary. I was like kind of right on that cusp of where I felt like I could afford the help, but I wanted to make sure that if I was going to do it, that I uh, kind of tested the waters first. That's what I thought it was going to be, would be testing the waters of figuring out if I would hire a real person, like an in-person uh, help. And so I thought that it was a lower cost way to play around with this idea of having someone on the team, so to speak, and sort of be helping with my real estate business. And so that's kind of how it started. I knew there was 10 million things that you need to be doing in real estate at all times, and for one person to do that, I knew that it was pretty impossible. But I also knew that I was pretty dead set against hiring um, an in-person help, just because I thought that the value for the items that were needing attention, I didn't see the value proposition there at the time, and so I thought this would be a good way, sort of like a testing the waters, so to speak. Try it out, get a virtual assistant, see if it helps, and if it feels right and it feels good, then maybe you could hire an in-person assistant. And pretty quickly after doing it, I realized that I don't really need anyone in person, and for the same cost of having 3 or 4 virtual assistants is going to be one in person. And it's been a pretty great experience. It's been definitely a learning experience. It's not like, just like getting into real estate, getting a virtual assistant. It's not necessarily an easy thing. There's a pretty big learning curve, and the learning curve, a personal learning curve. Um, but it's been really great to push myself to figure out how to systematize things and to offload things. And if I find myself doing something more than once, trying to figure out how I can get my virtual assistant Ray to take care of those things for me. It's been great. It's been a positive challenge in my life.
I mean, definitely. That's what's great about hiring a virtual assistant compared to someone like in-house. You can afford to take a loss in virtual assistants because you're paying basically quarter of a price, and you don't need to get through the paperwork of removing someone from the office, which takes a lot of time and of course money as well. And that's the thing about virtual assistants. You can either cut them off if it doesn't work because it's not for everyone. But if you get to find the perfect virtual assistant for you, it will save you lots in both time and money. And in your case, Chris, if I may ask, in your virtual assistant experience right now, how many do you have right now, and what are the tasks that they're doing for you?
I just have one. I've had one for, it's probably been a little over, it's probably her third year with me. She handles a lot of my social media stuff, a lot of my database cleanup, a lot of my monthly, or I'm sorry, my weekly newsletter. Um, she handles a lot of online lead sort of generation items, um, and so anything that's, I try to give her as much as I can. She handles me with transactions, so contract organization. I guess you'd call it contract to close. She probably does about 75% of that for me. Um, Kind of any of the remedial tasks, any sort of the admin tasks that I sort of despise doing. She really tries to help me out in sort of getting those things across the board and getting finished, or at the very least keeping me organized. Where it's the thing in real estate. So many times you can go in 17 different directions and something can slip through the cracks. So she's really great at helping making sure that, nothing gets missed and everything's sort of turned in and found and done each week. I kind of say she's almost like my accountability partner, as much as she is a helper of my real estate business.
Yeah. I guess she really is a rock star kind of VA, being helping you out with several tasks at once. And I can only imagine how much time she saves up for you. Because I think you can do all the tasks that she can do, but let's say it will cost you like 2, 3 hours in a day, but it piles up like every day in a year. It's several hours that you can be using for like things that's gonna make more sense in terms of business. So I guess that's the wonders of having a virtual assistant. It's flexible and they're resourceful as well. They can do a lot of tasks, and as you've mentioned, they do things from like social media, handling your newsletter, and even transactional things. So pretty much all in one in terms of having a virtual assistant. But of course, it's gonna depend on the business owner itself. You need to lead them and manage them properly. So in that case, how did you get to, it's 3 years, so I'm sure that it's not, you need to somewhat get to know the curves and how to manage having a virtual assistant. So how were you able to transition, the tasks that you need to do to your assistant?
I think skyrocket was a pretty good help in s- helping us think about ways to set up systems and processes to be able to offload these tasks with a virtual assistant. Um, and I mean, really, it was just kind of following their framework to a certain degree, and then just figuring out how to apply it to different things. And like I said, it's not perfect, and it takes some time, and there's still probably a million things that I'm not doing to its full potential or totally the way that I would like to do it. But again, that's not anyone's fault but my own. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it's it for people who are hyper organized, for people that love spreadsheets and love um, data and taking the time to slow down. I'm a little bit the opposite, where I just kind of like to get stuff done and don't like to deal with it. Um, it can be it doesn't have to be super difficult, but it's you just got to take the time to create the process for whatever it is you're doing. Take the time to write down the steps, to record the steps, take the time to slow down and to sort of educate, and then be willing to spend the time to do that, and then eventually you don't have to do it anymore.
Definitely. I think for a lot of people, they tend to either micromanage their virtual assistant or just not really care at all. Like, okay, I'm gonna give you this task to you at the end of the week. It's important to at least do some touch base at the end of the day. Like, hey, how's your day going? Do you do this, do that? But not like every hour you need to be that virtual assistant. That level of trust on what he or she is doing should be established. Otherwise, it kind of beats the point of saving you time if you're just going to be with him along the way. And I guess you pretty much, again, it's not perfect yet, but you're getting closer to perfection every day as you try to record everything and trying what works and what doesn't work and writing. So that really helps in terms of like setting up your system, in terms of having a virtual assistant that goes well with your business. And going
Yep.
back to your business, and you're selling, properties in Nashville. So what would you say, why do you think should people move into Nashville?
I don't think anyone will care why I think they should move to Nashville. I just think it's Nashville in general has been a very popular place for people to call home. I think the cost of living, while it's increased greatly, it's still relatively affordable when you compare it to a major metropolitan city like San Francisco, Los Angeles, or New York. Obviously, it's a bit more tax friendly than what you're going to find on the coasts. People that want a little bit more space. Obviously, we've got a lot more space than what you're going to find on the coasts. And I just think the quality and the way of life, I mean, I think I love living in San Francisco. I love visiting New York. I love hanging out in Los Angeles, all amazing, wonderful places in their own right, but not necessarily a place that I could imagine myself living anymore. And I think that there's quite a few people that have felt similar but different than I did regarding my situation living in the city that I did, and are just looking for kind of a change of pace. And I feel like Nashville is a nice intermediary. It's sort of a nice. It can be a softer landing. It has a hometown feel, but it still has some city growth and vibrancy to it. And then cost of living and no state income tax and all that doesn't hurt as well.
Of course, you also got great food selections, as we've talked about earlier in Nashville. So that definitely helps if you're wanting to have a taste of home. I guess you also have a diverse cuisine in terms of the restaurants near there. So if you're looking for somewhere that's a bit close to home in terms of culinary, then I guess that's something that you can have here in Nashville as well. And I guess my last question before we end the podcast is if you would have an advice to anyone that's getting started in the real estate, like yourself, like either switching in into real estate, what would be your advice to them so they would do a lot better and staying and hopefully making it in the real estate world?
Don't do it. Just kidding. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people think it's easy. I think a lot of people think um, I think a lot of people think it's easy because it's easy to become a real estate agent. It's easy to get your real estate license. I think we came from a market where things were pretty easy, pretty great time for real estate, and we're sort of in a market now where that's not exactly the same, or not exactly the way it was a few years back. So I think there's a lot of people that have gotten into the industry that are probably going to be getting out. And I think the only way, I mean, obviously, if you know a ton of people that are rich and that just want to give you business, that's probably the easiest way to do real estate. But for everyone else, the only option is you just have to be willing to work harder than everybody else. You have to be willing to put in the time and put in the work and sacrifice to create a business for yourself. And if you're not willing to do that, there's not going to be a lot of people that are just going to come out and just say, "Hey, will you list my house?" Like, you have to figure out how to meet those people and how to ask for it, and then how to convince them to use you to list your house. So it's not a terribly easy thing, but it can be done. You just have to be willing to work for it.
Exactly. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, the very start as starting in real estate would be hard, especially if you don't have any connections. But once you got that snowball rolling on, you'd be surprised, the amount of referrals. If you've done a great job as a real estate agent, your clients or your past clients will be able to work for you in terms of like getting you new clients. Again, it's hard at first. It's not gonna get easier, but if you just work better, you're gonna have a better process in terms of getting everything in place to hopefully make you succeed in this world of real estate. So, Chris, it's been amazing having you here. And before we end this, maybe you can tell us what are the best ways to see your listings, get in touch with you, or yeah.
Yeah, you can give me a call for those people that still do that, 615-398-2146. You can shoot me an email. It's Chris at Kasa, Kasa dot real estate. There is no .com. It's just Chris at Kasa dot real estate. You can also go to my website, www.kasa, Kasa dot real estate, and send me a message. Send me
Okay,
a
definitely.
referral.
That's the best way. I guess you can also give commissions to people who's able to give you referrals and stuff like that. So if you're in the area of Nashville, Tennessee, then definitely give Chris here a call or an email because I think not a lot of people would like to call from the get go, but yeah, some people still do, and pretty much he's more than open and happy to answer all of your concerns or help you out with everything real estate or just finding out the best places to eat at Nashville. So, Chris, thank you so much once again for being here with us with Sphere Rocket, the Sphere Rocket Podcast Network. And I wish you the best in all of your business endeavors. And yeah, that is our podcast for today. And we'll hope to see you again in the next episode. Goodbye, everyone.